and welcome to folks. We're really glad that you're with us tonight because we have a very, very special program as we continue our Black History Month series. Tonight we are going to have a live discussion with opportunity for you as an audience to get involved in the discussion. We're going to be talking about civil rights. I'm Sharon Elizabeth Sexton, producer of the program, and with me is a very distinguished panel of guests. To my far left, we have Linton Ardoin, Secretary of Urban and Community Affairs here in Louisiana. Representative Richard Turnley, Jr., who is the chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus. And we also have Samuel Thomas to my right, the first vice president of the NAACP. Welcome to folks, gentlemen.
Thank you, Sharon.
Civil rights has been one of Black America's longest and dearest fights for equal justice. Equal rights comes under that, voters' rights, and all kinds of other rights which seem to be encompassed in civil rights. But in hearing various people talk in the community, they are afraid that some of the civil rights which were gained during the 50s and 60s and 70s are now on the verge of being lost through various kinds of politics and other kinds of I guess, incidentals. Representative Turnley, are we on the verge of losing any of our civil rights? You've been in this battle for 10 years now.
Well, Sharon, I think that what we are experiencing is something similar to what happened some 100 years ago during Reconstruction, where many gains were made by blacks in this country and this state. And we found that those types of gains were taken away. And I think we were finding something similar to that happening today in Louisiana and in this country. For example, last November, we had a special session of the legislature to deal with reapportionment of the legislature and the Congress. And of course, we found that gains that we made in the 70s were taken away from us in the 80s, and of course, rather than progressing, we had dilution and retrogressing, and so therefore, I would say yes, those gains are being attacked, and of course, I feel that we have to be very diligent and astute not to allow the same thing to happen that happened 100 years ago.
Okay. What about some of the individual, I guess, fights? I know the NAACP right now and the Legislative Black Caucus, as well as, I guess, most other black people who are into politics and into making some kind of decision, they're very concerned about the Voters' Rights Act and whether it will be renewed and basically what is happening in Louisiana. What is the mood in Louisiana?
I believe that everyone is concerned about it because we have to admit that the 1964-65 Voting Rights Act was very instrumental in blacks gaining political power and helping to bring about the changes that you talked about in the civil rights movement. It is now popular to be conservative, and therefore we have some problem with the passage of the Voters' Rights Act because senators and representatives and on the national level can be conservative and do not feel that it will be or will hurt them when they return home to their constituents. And this is why the local, and definitely here in Louisiana, we would have to stress and make inroads to our legislators and our senators and congressmen and let them know the position of this 1/3 population of this community.
Yeah, a lot of people seem, or at least we get the impression, that the Voters' Rights Act, and if it is not passed, would be, I guess, directed toward blacks or at blacks to make sure that they don't go to the polls or whatever the injustices were which brought about the act in the first place. Is this a big concern?
What? Go ahead, Lynn.
From a civil rights perspective, I think the Voting Rights Acts of 1964 and 68, which is still in effect, by the way, I think it goes out of existence in 1983. So the Congress of the United States is hoping members of the Congressional Black Caucus have been vehemently supportive of an extension, and there have been several amendments to the Voting Rights Act. I personally don't believe that the Voting Rights Act is the most significant issue facing black Americans today when you look at the unemployment situation, the educational crisis that we're going to be faced with as a result of tremendous transition in many federal programs. Certainly it is very important, and we are going to, as a people, have to prioritize our concerns and get involved in the political process. It's going to take very involved, direct political action on the part of black Americans to deal with the general issue of civil rights.
Okay, I don't want to interrupt our train of thought, but I would like to encourage those people who are viewing at home, if you want to get involved with this discussion, pick up your phone and call the numbers which will be flashed across the screen throughout this interview. We'd like your comments, get involved, and become a part of this whole civil rights discussion. I know Representative Turnley wants to get in on it.
Yes, I do, Sharon. I think that the extension of the Civil Rights Act is the most important issue that's facing black Americans. And the reason I say that is because when Mr. Ardoin enumerated the kinds of problems that we'll be faced with in the very short future, those problems will be addressed by decision-making bodies, legislative bodies, and if we are there, then we cannot influence in any way what happens or the priorities that are established by those particular bodies. So the act itself allowed us the possibility to become a part of the political process. And if that is taken away from us, then you eliminate us from that process, and of course we will not be able to then influence in any way the kinds of problems, addressing those kinds of problems that we have to address. And so I think that that is the most important issue, and I think that the extension of it is very important, and I think we have to do whatever is necessary in order to see that it's done, because I think it has to do with everything else that will be coming in the very near future.
Okay, one of the things which I have observed since I've been kind of involved with the media is that during an election, black folks aren't getting out to vote. They're not exercising, or it doesn't seem as though the majority of the black people are exercising their right to vote. Right. So I'm sure that there are politicians out there who say, well, they don't go out and vote anyway. Why should they care whether we extend this Voters' Right Act or not? And then when you talk about the reapportionment, you know, there are some people who are in the black community who really could care less, you know, like as far as who represents them and that whole political process.
Sure, and I think this is in my estimation, this is the most important concern that we as black Americans should have, especially now since we are focusing on Black History Week. Certainly now we have access to the political process through the voting mechanism. Certainly you have other areas of the country where there are numerous problems, where there are tremendous barriers to folks participating in the electoral process. And I think these are the areas that will be addressed as a result of the extension of the Voting Rights Act. But the other problems, as I see it, that must go along with extension of the Voting Rights Act, which I support wholeheartedly, is mass education on the part of our black people, because as you alluded to, there's a tremendous amount of non-participation on the part of our people, and this is the kind of thing that concerns me. So I'm hoping that we, black Republicans, black Democrats, independents, whatever, can join hands together with a united front to see how we can get our people motivated.
But goodness, we've been doing that for the last, I don't know, umpteen years, and like how long is it going to take before black people get educated enough to actually start participating full-heartedly in the political process and all the other processes which we have to deal with in order to keep the civil rights?
Well, I think one of the things that you have to understand, Sharon, is the fact that we are involved in the political process. I'm in the legislature as a result of that involvement. We do understand, but I think it's a matter of defining what involvement is. You see, in our community, when we elect individuals or select individuals to a decision-making body, we feel that that is the spokesman for that community, and that person is involved, and he takes care or she takes care of those things that are of concern to that community of interest. And of course, we have so many other basic problems that we have to deal with. We can't stand the so-called luxury of that total involvement in the political process, so we elect leaders to do that. But I think that we're getting to that point where if you can take care of the basic needs of that person, that is a good job, and he's able to take care of his family, and have some spare time to get involved in the political process, I think you'll find that will happen. But the most basic thing now is to get that good job and to take care of that family. And once those things are done, I think then you will get involved. And I think we see more involvement of our people in the political process. You just look all around, and you'll find in almost every community persons involved. And so I think there should be more involvement, but I think that we have come a long way.
Yeah, I have to agree with Representative Turnley here, and we have to also remember that voting is in fact a luxury. And you're talking about a community where 14% are better unemployed. You have a large percentage of people on food stamp, on welfare. So we're talking about a luxury, and we're talking about a people who need general leadership and education, and it comes through time. In the 60s, you would find communities that did not have black doctors, black lawyers, black professionals, except the school teachers, and it was a segregated system. That has changed somewhat, and with the continuation of the civil rights, the Voters' Right Act, it will change even more by the 90s, the year 2000. I have a friend of mine who makes a statement that is very unique, and I agree with. No matter what is said, you must remember that we, as blacks, are only teenagers in the political process. Teenagers based on the fact that we started in the 60s, and now it's 82. So we're only talking about 18 years or so, and whereas the rest of this country has been free and been voting for over 200 years.
Okay, we have a caller. Why don't we take a caller's question? Hello, are you out there?
Hello?
Hello, how are you? Thank you for calling. Can you hear me? If you're calling in, please turn down your television set and just talk to us on the phone. Are you still there, sir?
Yes.
Okay.
Hello?
Hi. What is your question?
My name is J.B. Horn,
Mm-hmm.
President of the National Black Chamber of Commerce. My question to those elected officials there, which I want them to know that I respect them very highly anytime we have black elected officials during these days and times, that I want to know what they will do to assist the blacks across this state to make those appointed blacks more accountable to the black community like they were during the 50s and the 60s, because those appointed blacks now are no longer playing the roles of the old Uncle Toms. They're playing the role today of the three-piece suit, wine, cheese, and cracker niggas. They're newfound day Uncle Tom. And these individuals must be made aware that they are standing on the shoulders of Martin Luther King, Murray McLeod Bethune, and none of them got their appointments through their own initiative.
Okay.
But through the initiative of those blacks like myself, who were whipped, and they would take us and put us in jail and stick those electric cow prowls all over our bodies.
Okay, well, why don't we let one of the elected official or appointed official answer that?
Well, I think he addressed that to the elected official, and I'm the only one here. I think that we have a responsibility as elected officials to make sure that those persons who serve in the various appointed positions in state government or local government be accountable to those persons that they represent. I think that you have to understand the process. The individuals are appointed by the person. For instance, let's talk about the governor. The governor has appointees, and he appoints these individuals to serve in certain capacities. I think last week I talked about this subject and indicated that if these individuals are not given the proper authority to discharge their responsibility to their constituency, then they would be lacking in terms of what they are able to do. And of course, we have spoken out on this, and of course, we will address the person that responsible for these appointments and let them know how we feel about that kind of delegation of authority. And I think that when we do more of this, I think you'll see the response from these individuals addressing the needs of our people far better than otherwise.
Okay, since Linton Ardoin is an appointed official, who is your allegiance to, the governor who appointed you or to the black people with whom you have to associate?
Well, first, let me say that I appreciate the question. I know J.B. Horn. I had not seen or heard from J.B. in quite some time. If you are listening, J.B., give me a call. I agree with Representative Turnley. I think the allegiance is a twofold responsibility. As an elected official and as an appointee of the Trina administration, we should consider ourselves public servants in that we advocate on behalf of our constituency, and that being the entire gamut, you know, all the people of Louisiana. In terms of accountability, I see my role as a black appointee of the Trina administration to provide some mechanism, some avenue of making the governor and the legislature aware of those concerns that affect adversely upon the black community. And I'm very concerned about the apathy that exists among our people, and we, as legislators and as appointees, are only as effective and as strong as the people who are out there, you know, getting involved.
We have some calls coming in. Thank you, sir, for calling. Let's take another call now. Do we have another call?
Yes, I'm Dr. Penrose, and I'm concerned about the black teachers in this parish. In terms of the promotional policies, many times when a black teacher's job is terminated, it is replaced by whites. And I'm concerned with the fact that a lot of our schools have a lot of black teachers who are qualified to be promoted, but they're not. I'm also concerned that a lot of our black schools just this year have PTA presidents, whereby they really should have PTA presidents that are white. And black people seem to be very much complacent. And I'm concerned about the plight of the black teachers in this parish.
I can't speak directly for East Baton Rouge Parish in that I'm from North Louisiana and Madison Parish, but the NAACP has focused in on this problem. And giving you an example of that, in North Louisiana, Northeast University, a state university, Dr. John has filed a similar complaint there based upon promotion. It's a university, but it's still the same principles involved. He was denied a promotion to Vice President of Student Affairs when the present Vice President retired. I think that it is now time, and I'd like to refer back that the educated, middle income, pull off their coats and roll up their sleeve. It's a fight. And we cannot fight it without you bringing the problem forth. A lot of times the problems are not brought forth. Individuals take secondary appointments and make no complaints about it. I believe that if these complaints are brought forth and we challenge them in the courts, in the boards, we do have a few blacks on the school board here in East Baton Rouge Parish, I believe, and definitely in North Louisiana. And once these problems are brought forth and the individuals that have suffered these discrimination, if they come forth, then we will better be able to move on the problem.
Okay, thank you for calling. Let's take another call. Hello?
Yes. Yes. My name is Bob Ford. I'm calling with respect to your discussion on voter participation. And I wanted to ask this question of the panelists. Is it reasonable to suggest that a strategy for improving voter participation might be a very serious study of voter patterns and voter and non-voter profiles and other such factors that affect voter participation? And further, is it even more reasonable that a Southern University or a Grambling State University be a leading force in such a study for this state?
Let me respond to that. I agree with that assessment. I think the one mistake that we, as a group of people, have not done was really do our own research. And out of this research, this data gathering, we could hopefully make and develop meaningful strategies to deal with many of the problems that we are talking about. And I agree with that and would support a concerted effort between the NAACP, folks in the Trina administration, members of the Black Caucus, and other concerned community groups to come together and develop such a strategy and utilize universities like Southern and Grambling. I would support that.
Okay.
You want me to? Yeah, I'd like to just say I know Dr. Ford. He lives in my district. And we are, when I say we, I'm talking about the Legislative Black Caucus. We are calling a roundtable discussion of individuals from various disciplines from all over the state of Louisiana. The call will be going out real soon, at which time these kinds of concerns and strategies will be developed so that we can come up with long-range goals and objectives to accomplish certain objectives that we establish with regards to voter registration, voter education, and the kind of research is necessary in order to see exactly if we do have that participation.
We have the resources, and there's no reason in the world why we could not develop that kind of planning.
And I believe that the Southern University Political Science Department has attempted to do this once or twice. In fact, get more involved in the political process, more than just theory, but in reality. And they have done some work, and I think that if the local organization elected officials would utilize these departments more so, that it would be beneficial to the total community. In other words, again, we're talking about unity, and there is a need for it.
Okay, thank you for calling. One area, and I know we have to get into it before we go off the air, is desegregation. For the last 2 weeks, folks has aired a program on desegregation in Lafayette school system. In fact, Linton was a graduate of the high school, which was closed there.
Right.
And basically, what the discussion of these people who lived in the system was that desegregation wasn't working. Various things that were happening in the schools seemed to be working against blacks as a whole, and the lady brought up the fact that, yes, there seems to be a concern about black teachers, and in fact, what we found out was that there is a very, very limited amount of black folks who are in the higher echelons of education who have really any kind of power. So is desegregation really helping us out here, or did we miss the boat somewhere in there?
Well, I think you have to understand, the whole process and what it's all about. First of all, separate but equal schools was the law of the land some years back. And the problem with that is that it was separate but not equal. And so therefore the courts then decided that in order for blacks to have to obtain a quality education, that the system must provide that for them. And so we felt through the NAACP and others that the only way that we were going to get that quality was to desegregate our schools and go into the schools where the whites were.
But did we get that quality?
Well, the process, you got to understand who controls the system and how they manipulate the system to undo what you attempt to do. It has not worked in a lot of instances where you have white flight from the schools, and they go to private schools, they go out to other areas and take the schools out to those areas, and they call it neighborhood schools. And now we have to fight against busing for desegregation purposes. So you got to understand that although we have attempted to get that quality, that there are other folks that are trying not to give it all at their expense, and so therefore we have problems with trying to obtain it, and we just have to keep coming up with the kinds of ideas and plans of action that would give us that ultimate goal of a good education for all of our people.
Okay, the NAACP is very involved.
It has not worked up to our expectation. It has worked to some degree, and the idea was not a utopian idea. It was a necessity because we were talking about separate but equal with the system and the white American controlling the dollar. And the only way that we could get our fair share of that dollar was to be in the same system, educational-wise. And this was the position of the NAACP. And in our struggle, we see a lot of shortcomings in regards to what the system has done to defeat integration. It just means that we have to step up our attack and move on it because we are solid behind and support integration.
Well, I would like to thank all of you gentlemen. We're running out of time. I keep getting told in my ear here that we are out of time. If you were calling in and you hadn't had a chance to get on the program and ask your question, we'll try to get these gentlemen to a telephone and talk to you personally about whatever it is you'd like to talk about. I would like to thank Linton Ardoin, the Secretary of Urban and Community Affairs, Representative Richard Turnley, Chairman of the Legislative Black Caucus, and Samuel Thomas from the NAACP. It's been a very interesting discussion, and perhaps we can carry this on the phones even after the program goes off the air. We hope you're with us next week on Folks as we continue our Black History Month series. So we'll see you next week, and keep on the struggle.